Inshallah, we'll get started. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الوالدين يا رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Continuing, I guess this is number 6 in the category of the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. And all of this is really a continuation of Ahlul Bayt, or the focus on Ahlul Bayt. So, last week we got to the point just before the martyrdom of Sayyidina Ali, radiallahu anhu. And so one thing that I didn't mention was, if you remember in the Battle of Nahwan, you had people that abandoned his army, or right before the Battle of Nahwan, people that abandoned his army. Some of them came back to his army, some of them left, saying that, well, we're neither with him nor against him. And then those who fought against him. And then after the battle, you had many people who said, oh, you were too harsh with them, you should have done this, you should have done that. And so you had people that basically abandoned him, because they didn't like the way he dealt with that battle. Which, if you actually analyze what happened in the battle, that was the only option he had, was to deal with them in such a way. And this is what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had already told him. So, people forget. If I look at like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu never made a decision without consulting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam throughout his whole life, even before Islam, and definitely even after Islam, to the extent that even when he was buried, the place that he was to be buried was decided with the consultation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've gone over that before, so I'm not going to go into the details of that. Ali radiallahu never did anything without the command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everything he did, every action he took, was under that guidance and command. And so we have to keep all of that in mind when we're talking about them. When we're talking about Ali radiallahu anhu, these people start saying, well, he should have done this, he should have done that, which basically they're saying that they know better than he knew, is what that translates to. So, you have all of these people that really abandon him. And at the same time, this is a moment when the Islamic Empire is split. So you have parts of it under his control and a smaller part under the control of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. The supporters of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu were very much, I guess, more enthusiastic about supporting him than some of, or rather a significant portion of the supporters of Ali, and we've gone over that a little bit as to all of these things that had happened that weakened his position in the eyes of people. Didn't weaken his position, but weakened his position in the eyes of general people. You still have those who support him with everything that they have because they understand his maqam, his status, his position. They understand his position in relation to the message that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam brought. They understand his position and status that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave him. So they have no hesitation in accepting anything and any decision he makes. So just before he's martyred, he is in the process of trying to reassemble his army to go and deal with the forces in Sham to reunite the Ummah, so that the Ummah can put a united force or face before all of the disbelief and deal with all of that aspect of things. Until this point, he has not been able to focus on anything outside of the empire itself. You know, if I look at the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, first 6 months, which is the period of the Rida Wars, he had to focus on the internal stuff, fix the house, and then after that he was able to start expeditions in other places, deal with all the threats from the outside. Umar, the whole 10 years of his Khilafah is dealing with the threats from the outside. He deals with the internal issues, but he controls them in such a way, or rather he's able to control them in such a way that what would be known as the fifth column, in military terms, but the forces within that try to destroy you from within, they were never able to stick their heads out, because they knew that as soon as they would do that, their head would get knocked off. Then you have the Khilafah of Uthman, and the same thing happened for the 6 years of his Khilafah, where everything was smooth. He was able to focus on the external issues, or rather the opposing parties from the outside. Then the last 6 years of his Khilafah, then you have all these internal issues that came up. And so during the Khilafah of Ali RA, he's dealing with all of those issues, trying to put everything at rest, at the same, but then what happens is, and we've talked about this, so this reiteration of what we already said, what happens is that, as you try to deal with one thing, something else pops up. And because the hypocrites at this point have gotten their foot in the door. That door that Rasulullah says was shut and would be broken, and that door, of course, was Umar, so they got their foot in that door, and now they're able to create all this turmoil and issues. And again, like even today, with all of the social media and all of the fast news and all of this stuff, you have so much misinformation being spread around. Well, at that time it was much easier to do that, and it would take months for news to reach from one place to another place. So you have to keep we keep forgetting to keep that in mind, and that's why I keep reiterating it so many times, because we remember it at the moment, and then we drift into something else, and then it's like, well, why did they do this? Well, it's not like they could pick up a phone and talk to each other. So where we left off last time, as I mentioned, the plot or the plan to assassinate Ali was literally made in the shade of the Kaaba. So Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam, as I said, he grew up, in the presence of Ali radiallahu anhu. He took part in various battles alongside with Ali radiallahu anhu. And then when all of these other issues rose up, he joined the Khawarij. Then of course, he's offered, and he's amongst those that, why were you so harsh with them in the Battle of Nahwan? Why did you deal with them in such a way? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then, of course, he sees this girl and he wants to marry her, and her father and her brother and her uncle were killed by Ali radiallahu anhu. So when she sees the opportunity that, well, I'll marry you under the condition that, one of the gifts that you give me is the head of Ali. So that night, as we mentioned last week, and I'm going to go reiterate some, or after we talk about the assassination and the martyrdom, kind of go over some points, kind of tie things together, inshallah. But that night, as I said, you have this sense in the air that something major is about to happen. So you have people coming to Ali, wanting to be his guardian that night, wanting to, stand guard at his door, to protect him. And he tells them, he said, look, the will of Allah prevails, period. If this is the time, then doesn't matter what you do, nothing is going to stop that. And so, as he's headed to the masjid, he's also waking people up for salah. And then when he enters the masjid, so this is Fajr Salat. So you have to remember this. So it's dark. Yeah, you got candles and you got lights, but they're not, lights like today. So it's not like, like today, you like a lot of massages, you walk in and everything's lit up and you can see everything clearly. That's not the way it worked back then. You had candles, you had shadows, and anybody can hide in the shadows. So Abdul Rahman, along with his helpers, and he had 2 helpers, were hiding in the masjid. And as he enters the masjid and he starts to make salat, one of them attacks him and misses, and Abdul Rahman attacks and strikes him with his sword on his forehead. And of course, and it cracks the skull, and his whole beard is wet with his blood. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had already told him that this, your beard, he touched his beard and says, this will become wet from this, pointing toward his forehead. Meaning that your beard will become wet with the blood of from the blood of your forehead. The sword wasn't an ordinary sword that he attacked him with. This sword he had infused with poison. What they would do, if anybody who understands metallurgy, if you heat up a metal, it expands. Most substances, when you heat them up, they expand. Well, in metal, you have these crevices and cracks, rather crevices and indentations, pores, so they open up. So they would heat it up and place it in the poison, and as the metal cooled, those pores would lock down, and you basically have a sword, a piece of metal that's infused with poison. So this is something they understood back then. And so, this wasn't simply, okay, you got some you dipped it in a little poison and, you put it into something and it wipes it all off. So he struck him, and then, he's eventually captured. One of the other ones that was involved was captured. One of the other ones made it to his house and was bragging to one of his relatives about that he was part of this plot to kill Ali. The relative was one of the lovers of Ali and took care of him there. So this happened in Ramadan. It's the 19th of Ramadan, Fajr Salat, and Ali when he's struck, he falls, but he doesn't die. The poison was such that he should have pretty much died immediately. The strike was such that he should have been unconscious at least for a while and then died immediately. This, of course, is Ali, the Lion of Allah. And so, people rush to him, and they, lay him down in a bed. Abdul Rahman is captured and brought. And Ali tells them, he's still talking. He's talking, giving them advice, telling them what to do. And he says to them, that, look, if I survive this, then I will deal with him myself. And I may forgive him. This is This is the one whose nur is directly from the nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is rahmatul lil alameen, who is a mercy to all of creation. He says, you know, I'll either forgive him or I will decide what punishment he is to be given. And he tells them also, he says, make sure that he's comfortable and do not torture him. You know, and they tied him to a bed, and he said to make sure that the bed was soft, so it was not any discomfort for him. Again, this is a man talking about the man who is basically trying to assassinating him. And he says, you know, if I survive, I will decide how to deal with him. And if this becomes, you know, this is the cause of my death, then, you know, again, deal with him. And if you choose, forgive him. He gives that option. He says, if you choose, forgive him. But if you execute him, do not torture him. Simply one blow and execute him. People come and they are asking him many things. One of the questions that was asked also was that who will be our leader? Who will be the Khalifa after you? He says, appoint someone. They're asking him to appoint someone as the Khalifa after him, and he refuses. He says, I will not appoint the Khalifa. The Shura will decide. You know, even though he also knows that Imam Hassan al-Islam is qualified, his son. And he also knows that he will be the Khalifa, but he is not going to be the one who assigns him as the Khalifa. Again, Islam, the Khilafah is not a kingship. As later kings would claim to be Khalifas, but they were still kings. And the Khilafah is not a kingdom. And as we mentioned, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Khilafah is for 30 years. And we keep repeating this. So at this point, Ramadan, year 40 Hijri, okay, it's only 29 and a half years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the 30 years is not up. So he knows that the Khilafah has to continue, and the Khilafah you can't appoint. Abu Bakr, then people say, well, Abu Bakr appointed Umar. Abu Bakr didn't appoint Umar. Abu Bakr suggested that the people choose Umar, that the Shura choose Umar. The Shura still chose him. You know, just like when Umar was assassinated, he said, we'll choose among these 6. And the Shura chose from those 6. So they made suggestions, didn't mean that the Shura had to accept the suggestion. So when so again, this is important to understand. There are people who inject things into this. I was listening to one guy, and he was talking about, oh, see, Ali didn't appoint Imam Hassan al-Salam, and he said, you know, the Shura will choose whoever is the best amongst you. Just like when the Shura chose Abu Bakr, radiallahu. And, you know, this notion that the Khilafah belongs to the one who is Afzal, who is the best amongst the people general, this is actually a notion of the Shia. This isn't a Sunni concept. You know, amongst the Sunnis, you can have someone whose maqam or whose status is below someone else be the Khalifa, but he at that moment is the best person for that job because of other reasons. So that also should be clear. You know, so this person was trying to say, oh, see, Ali was saying that, you know, we chose Abu Bakr because he was Afzal, he was the best overall. No, he was the best for that position at that moment. So You know, again, this is a Shia notion that people who claim to be Sunni try to throw around. And the afternoon of the 21st of Ramadan. So basically, essentially 2.5 days, 3 days later, he eventually succumbed to the blow. This is again a significant sign of his strength and miraculous in itself. Because basically, you know, you got to strike that's cracked the skull. If I look at it from a medical standpoint, you got CSF, you know, spinal fluid that's leaked out. You know, things should not be working anymore. He should not be speaking. And if he is speaking, he should not be speaking intelligibly, you know, giving advice. Again, he is Asadullah. He is the lion of Allah. He is the conqueror of Khaybar. This isn't just anybody. And so he eventually passes. And now this is, you know, the question comes, who will be the Khalifa? And I'm going to go over this kind of quickly today and then kind of go over this again next week, inshallah, this aspect of things, and kind of go into more details. But just kind of quickly, they eventually chose Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Everybody, this was kind of a given. His choosing though is very unique compared to the choosing of his previous 4 predecessors. They were still in the period of Khilafah. There's a lot of people will tell you, oh, you know, the Khilafah ended with Ali, which it did not. Because if they claim that, then they also are claiming that the statement of Rasulullah is not true either, which of course is an impossibility. But even if I look at it without that statement, the Khilafah did not end with Ali, it ends with Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And then they want to make excuses. Oh, it was very short, so we're just going to lump it in with Ali rather than no. You know, Abu Bakr Khilafah was 2.25 years. It wasn't very long either. And then those are the same people who want to accept, you know, all of Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas and all these other guys as Khalifas. Well, then, you know, there are kings amongst those who reign for a few months as well. Actually, there are kings amongst those who only reign for 40 days. So they keep contradicting themselves. So, but his choosing is very unique because he is the only Khalifa of these 5 who was chosen, or I guess the basis of whose choosing was the statement of Rasulullah himself. There is no other, you know, if I look at Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, none of them were chosen by somebody quoting a verse of the Quran or quoting a hadith of Rasulullah saying that based on this, we need to choose them as the Khalifa. None of them. This is unique to Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And like I said, we're going to go over that next week a little more. Unless, maybe I'll get to it today, we'll see. So Imam Hassan alayhi salam leads the Salatul Janazah, the funeral prayer for his father. And the Salatul Janazah is actually, before that, of course, you know, they give him ghusl. There are 4 people that give him ghusl. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he's also one of the sons of Ali, radiallahu anhu. And Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, who is the cousin of Ali, radiallahu anhu. So these 4 gave him ghusl and shrouded him. And then Imam Hassan al-Islam, you know, leads the Salatul Janazah with everybody who's there. And then these 3 go and bury him in secret. So for his burial, there are only 3 people present. Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. So all three are the sons of Ali. So they bury him. And the reason they buried him in secret was that they knew, with the way the conditions were, that if they buried him where everybody knew where he's buried, there was a high degree of certainty that eventually the Khawarij would come and dig him up and desecrate his body. And when we hear that, people think that, well, why would anybody do that? I mean, because we think of that, when we think of it, we think like, oh, this was something unique to the time. And it's not. This is something that continued on and is still happening even today. And we'll get into that in a minute, because that's important. As I said in the title of these last 6, talks have been the Khilafah of Ali RA and the world today. And so, as I said, if we want to understand what is going on in the world today, without being shocked as how can this happen, we need to look at his Khilafah. And especially when if you want to understand what is going on in the so-called Muslim world today, then we definitely need to look at his Khilafah. But everything that's going on the outside is also an extension of that. Because when you're busy focusing, trying to fix things within the house, everybody outside now sees an opportunity to come and do something. And so even, with this issue between Ali and Muawiyah, even then, the Roman emperor wrote a letter to Ali, because you think about this, Sham used to be Roman territory, Byzantine territory. When I say Romans here, I'm talking about the Byzantines, Eastern Roman Empire. Because that's what is referred to in the Quran and referred to by Rasulullah as Rome. Because these are the people who controlled it, in the background. So Sham and all of that territory was once Roman Empire, and of course, old kings want to get their, the lands that they ruled back if they lose them. So he writes a letter to Ali, and in the letter basically he says that we hear that there is an issue between you and Muawiyah, and if you want, our forces are ready to help you. If I look at that from a military standpoint, this would have been perfect. Because Sham sits between the lands that Ali controlled and what was left of the Eastern Roman Empire. So they could have simply sandwiched Muawiyah in between, the people of Sham. And then, of course, what would come later would be then the Romans would turn on Ali, of course, and because they would want that land, and they would want all of this property, and they want all this other stuff. So he wrote him a letter, and Ali wrote a letter back saying that, it's true that there is an issue between me and Muawiyah, and just like there are issues between brothers. But for you, we are one. Don't make any mistake about that. Today, when you look at the world today, we are all divided. Even when there is a common enemy, we can't get together. And we're seeing that now.
Did he also send a letter to Muawiyah?
He sent a letter to Muawiyah and received a similar response. But, if Muawiyah had aligned with him, it would have been a much more difficult issue. Plus, Muawiyah knew that he wasn't writing this out of the goodness of his heart. He was going to want Sham back, and Sham was under the control of Muawiyah, and the people of Sham were loyal to him. So, So again, today, because there's no one to clean up the house. And the problem is, most of us don't even realize the filth in the house. You look at something, that's like, it's become like a normal decoration piece in the house. Literally. All the filth piling up all over the place, and it's like, that's just normal decoration in the house. Because in order to clean up the house, you got to know, okay, where do I clean up? What do I clean up? So that's why we can't even get together against a common enemy. Those who literally want to wipe us out. And stay. They're openly saying this. And if we say anything, to try to defend ourselves, then how dare you? Then it suddenly becomes hate speech. And it's not even, we're not even saying anything harsh. Just mildly stating something as, this is hate speech. Censorship exists today. But we also have to remember censorship existed yesterday and the day before, all the way back. All these champions of free speech are the ones that want to censor you more. If you look at the modern day champions of free speech, their definition of free speech is anything that insults Islam or Rasulullah. That is free speech. If you say anything against them, then this is hate speech. Got to be censored. And a simple example of that is that cartoon people in France.
Charlie Hebdo?
Yeah, Charlie Hebdo. Or Hebdo, however you say it. Hebdo, whatever, however you say it. So, whenever they make these derogatory cartoons against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we get upset, then the so-called free world comes out, you people are against freedom of speech, right? When that same company or institution or whatever they are, after Queen Elizabeth died, did a piece against her, did a cartoon that was derogatory against her, that got banned in this so-called free world of England. Britain banned it. They said, how dare you? So, and now, though, anything that you say that goes against what they want you to say, suddenly you're labeled as, you're just talking hate speech. This is, you're so racist and anti-this and anti-that. And we need to, erase everything you got. And to the extent that they want to erase us as well. So when I look at, the Khilafah of Ali RA, there was a ton of propaganda against him. And if you remember, when I mentioned Farazdak was a poet, and according to most linguistic scholars of Arabic, they say that he was the best poet of Arabic, period. There was a competition between him and Jarir. His father was in the army of Ali, and after the Battle of the Camel, his father brought his son to Ali and said, use him. His language, he's very eloquent. You can use him, because that was the propaganda of the time. That was the media of the time, was the poetry. You can use him. And Ali said, I don't need this. The truth is able to stand on its own. Falsehood cannot. That's why falsehood always takes the support of truth. If you look at a lie, there is no lie that anybody will believe if it's 100% lie. That's why they always add some truth to it to make it more believable. The truth doesn't need anything else to support it. And of course, Ali is with the truth, and the truth is with Ali. And there are other aspects of that I want to go into, but I'm going to focus a little bit on what I just started first. So when I look at this, when I look at his Khilafah, well, let me go over one thing and kind of make you understand him better. When Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went for the Miraj, he was given a cloak. He actually, when he entered an area, there was this cloak, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to be able to take the cloak, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, yes, you can take the cloak under the condition, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if you look at those who are in the line or in the lineage of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whatever comes goes. You look at the whole life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his whole life was giving. Whatever came, he gave. If I look at the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu Wajh, whatever came, he gave. If I look at the life of Ali RA, whatever came, he gave. When I look at the true awliyaullah today, it's like, we would go to visit some, and it's like somebody comes, gives them a gift, and somebody else comes, and 2 minutes later, somebody else comes, I got something for you. These are not people who accumulate stuff of this world. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he knows if he takes it, he's going to give it. He says, under the condition that you give it to the one who is able to attain or reach my secrets. So when you turn, he comes, so Abu Bakr comes, and Rasulullah says, if I give you this cloak, what will you do with it? And Abu Bakr says that I will spread truthfulness. Abu Bakr Siddiq, he is Siddiq as-Siddiq, the truthful. He said, I'll spread truthfulness amongst the people. And Rasulullah says, it's not for you. So he asked Umar radiallahu anhu, if I give this to you, what will you do with it? And he says that I will spread justice amongst the people. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this is not for you. Uthman radiallahu anhu comes, and he says, if I give you this cloak, what will you do with it? He says, I will spread modesty amongst the people, because he was known for his modesty and his humility. So he said, I will spread modesty and humility amongst the people. And so Ali radiallahu anhu, when he came, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if I give you this cloak, what will you do with it? And he says, I will hide the faults of the people. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this is for you. This is how you attain the secrets of Allah. And so you have one Khilafah, which is the apparent Khilafah, in which Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is the first Khalifa without any break. And then Umar, and then Uthman, and then Ali radiallahu, and then Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And this Khilafah, the purpose of this Khilafah is to basically make sure that the rights of the people are given to them. But then you have a hidden Khilafah, in Khilafah Batniya. And some people, they're modern day people who deny this. Because people deny everything. And especially when it comes to Ahlul Bayt, they always want to pull them down. or try to show that there's no difference between them and anybody else. But this is mentioned in various Sunni sources, not Shia sources, Sunni sources, traditional Sunni sources. So this hidden Khilafah, the purpose of that is to raise the people spiritually, and this drives the undercurrent of society. And the Khalifa Awwal of this, the first Khalifa of this, without any break, is Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajh. And this is why, even when we look at the Khilafah of all of the other three Khalifas before him, who was the undercurrent where any questions arose, they came to him? It was Ali. Doesn't matter whether it's Abu Bakr radiallahu was the Khalifa, or Umar radiallahu was the Khalifa, or Uthman radiallahu was the Khalifa. Whenever an issue came up where they needed assistance, and whenever an issue came up that dealt with the spiritual aspect of the society, they always came to Ali radiallahu anhu. So these are things we got to keep in mind and understand. And this is again why the Khilafah of Ali RA is so important to understand. So, because it allows us to understand, where the filth is in the house and how to deal with the filth in the house. And that the house needs to be cleaned before I can deal with all of the external issues. All of those issues that are outside of the house. You don't go and do your lawn, if the house is falling down. I mean, it's just the way it is. You're not going to go and mow your lawn and prune the trees and whatever else and make sure that the sod is out and everything else, if the house is burning. So when you have internal issues, you're going to have issues with those people whose aqidah is proper, but maybe they dispute with you on something. So how do you deal with them? And we see this with Ali radiallahu anhu. There are those who when you deal with them immediately acknowledge, oh, okay, we realize what's going on now. So we see this in the Battle of the Camel. How do you deal with them? He dealt with them very gently. He treated them very well. Made sure that they were taken care of. Then you have those who, they accept Allah and His Messenger, they are believers, but when the issue comes up, they try to force their position. So how do you deal with them? And we see this in the Battle of Siffin. Because there are historians who write that maybe Ali should have backed off, he should have done this, he should have done that. But when you are on the truth, and you know that you're on the truth, then you don't back down from your position. You make accommodations in the sense that you give, those that are opposing you every opportunity to come to the realization of what is going on. And even when they continue to oppose you, you still deal with them as gently as possible. So again, Battle of Siffin, and we see this. And there are other aspects of that battle that I'm not going to go into. Because the problem is, especially things that get uploaded, people take a snippet of it and then say, "Oh, see, he said this," which is not what I'm saying. And in order to understand what we're talking about now, you really need to understand what we've talked about the past 5, weeks before today. And then you have those who have truly deviated. Who, even though when you look at them from the outside, look extremely pious and look extremely religious. And they're able to manipulate the words that they look very knowledgeable. And they can quote this and they can quote that. And they can tell you this and that. And all of the stuff in between. But when you look at their hearts, they are empty. But in order to understand them, you have to be able to look past the facade. And this is what's happened with us now. Is that people aren't able to look past the facade. They say, "Oh, he's got the nice long beard. He makes salat. He looks so like he's just concentrating so hard in his salat, and he recites the Quran so well, and he does this, and he's fasting, and he's doing all of these things. So he must be religious. He must be pious. He must be the friend of Allah." We forget the hadith, which is a Sahih hadith, which is in Mustadrak al-Hakim, where Rasulullah ﷺ describes a man who fasting, in the condition of fasting, he is in the condition of salat, and he's making salat not just anywhere, he's making salat between Hajar al-Aswad and Maqam Ibrahim. He is right there at the Kaaba making salat. And he dies in the condition of sajda. And Rasulullah says he goes straight to hell. Why? Because of his animosity toward Ahlul Bayt. And animosity comes in various shapes and sizes. You have those who just, like most of the Khawarij then, now they've changed their tune some, who just outright said Ali was kafir and they cursed him and did all of these things. That's no proof. Then you have those who, when you take the name of Ali, and you start praising Ali, they're going to say, "Well, what about so-and-so? What about so-and-so?" Well, I'm not talking about so-and-so right now. But then when they themselves are talking about somebody else, they never mention Ali. Right? Or if they do, it's kind of to downgrade his position indirectly. Even though they will give speeches about how much they love Ali RA and how much they love Ahlul Bayt and all of this, but again, when you start praising them, like we talked about, like ants in their pants, they just, what's going on? They can't sit still.
Fire ants.
They need the other, what are those ants called? Bullet ants. Those are what they need. So again, part of the reason that most of us can't see this is because we've overlooked the Khilafah of Ali RA and how he dealt with them. Because when he dealt with these people, he tried to reason with them again. You reason with everybody to begin with. And that's what he did. He tried to reason with them. Tried to show them the errors of their ways. But when they insisted on their position, then he dealt with them very differently than he dealt with anybody else before. Because he looked at them as people who have deviated, and and somebody can think of deviated, okay, just kind of splintered off. No, they deviated, they had exited the religion. Even though, again, when you look at them from the outside, they look so pious. But it's their attitude toward the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also their attitude toward Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I went over this a little bit more detail last week. When I look at those who took part in the Battle of Nahwan, the Khawarij, if I look at their origins, what are their origins? Their origins are to look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like anybody else. Like Dhul Khawaisra, when he comes and he says, do justice. So he's talking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is anybody else. Somebody who could do, because everybody else can potentially do injustice. So he's looking at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like anybody else. So these same people, when they challenge, the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they challenge the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They challenge various aspects of him. These people who, sound like a broken record, who keep saying, oh, he was a human being like us, he was a human being like us. He wasn't like us, nor are we like him. None of us receives revelation. Even the verse that they quote, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى. That first off is say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, even before that, if you look at the context of the verse, the verse is being addressed to the disbelievers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say to the disbelievers that I am a human being like you, except I receive revelation, which means he's not like you. Anybody who claims to be receiving revelation may be receiving revelation, but it's not from Allah. It's from Shaitan. Yet the revelation coming to Rasulullah is from Allah. So again, even in that verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates the distinction that he's not like you, so that the believers have no doubt. But then when it came the issue of the believers, and Rasulullah is making continuous fasting, 40 days without breaking a fast, and the companions tried to emulate him, and after about 2 or 3 days they're falling down. He asked them, what are you doing? They say, Ya Rasulullah, we see you doing this, so we want to emulate you. And what is his response? He says, Ayyukum mithli, are you like me? Meaning what? You're not like me. And then he goes on, you're not like me, and I am with my Lord, and he feeds me and gives me drink, meaning he gives me sustenance. Of course, everything is from Allah. But he's making this distinction. You're not like me.
To the believers.
Yeah, and this is addressed to the believers. So the believers already understand that point. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't have to clarify this here. For the believers, when they read that verse, they immediately understand, Yuha. Except he receives revelation. I don't receive revelation. That means he's not like me, and I'm not like him. But again, you have those that broken record. So again, they want to pull. And this is that same category. And these are the same people, like I was saying, there's a guy, what's going on, like in Gaza, this guy in UK, one of these Salafi scholars, Shamsi, who makes a statement that, essentially his statement is that they deserve this and because they're grave worshippers. These are the same people who will turn around and tell you that the Rawda, that the grave of Rasulullah should be taken out of the masjid. They won't even just tell you that, they write that down too. Because according to them, this is shirk. These are the same people who kill the believers, as I said, This is one of their characteristics. They kill the believers, and before they kill them, they also declare them as kafir. So everybody who doesn't believe exactly as they believe is kafir, and their blood and their wealth is lawful for them. So these are the people who have now infiltrated the house of Islam. And not only infiltrated the house, but have become the prominent figures that you see, all of this filth that you see laying around, that people now think is decoration because they recite the Quran so well, and they talk so good, and they make so much salat and read so much Quran and fast so much and all of these other things. And again, this is what the Khilafah of Ali RA is showing us. Don't fall for this. And when I look even not just at his Khilafah, but at why they buried him the way they did in secret. And I was saying, people think, oh, that's just in the past. They did the same thing to Imam Zaid. When they found out where his grave was, they dug him up and crucified him, hung him up, beheaded him, sent his head to the king in Sham, and then they crucified his body. So that was the year 122 Hijri. So what, 82 years after Ali radiallahu anhu. But again, even that's distant history. Same people who, when they went into went into Libya, what do you see them doing? In Libya you had a lot of maqbara, these areas where the awliyaullah and some companions of the Prophet ﷺ were buried, treated very well, respected places, generally attached to a masjid. These are the same people who went and bombed those places and shooting those graves with rocket launchers, saying Allahu Akbar. If you remember, when Imam Hussein al-Islam is martyred, as they're beheading him, what are they saying? They're saying Allahu Akbar. When Abdullah ibn Zubayr is martyred, when they're beheading him, what are they saying? They're saying Allahu Akbar. These are continuations of the same people. The same people who desecrate the grave of Yunus al-Salam in Iraq, in Nineveh. The same people who in Iraq dig up the grave of Hujr bin Adi radiallahu anhu and take his body away and just demolish the place. And this is recent. This is like all of this stuff that I'm mentioning is within the past 20 years.
And they still don't understand their bodies are fresh.
Yeah. And they dug up the body and took it away, and they still couldn't understand that there must be something different. There shouldn't be anything left. This is 1,400 years later.
The bone's still there.
No flesh.
The body's still fresh.
Yes, fresh.
The body's still fresh.
The body's still fresh.
Yeah.
One of the graves in Libya that they dug up from one of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The body was still there. Same people who in northern Pakistan, they came in, raided graves, mazar, the graves of saints, and dug them up. And they'd dig them up and they'd hang up on a tree. So we think that these people are back then. No, these people are today. Just as Ali radiallahu anhu said, if you remember, after the Battle of Nahwan, the people came to him and said, oh, you've destroyed all of the Khawarij. And he said, no. He said, they will be here until the last day. And these people are simply an extension of them. These are the same people who rule over us, who claim to be the caretakers of the holy places, who buy weapons from the enemies of Allah and His Messenger, and turn around and use those weapons to kill Muslims. And also supply materials to the non-Muslims to kill Muslims and aid them. Why hasn't any Muslim country done anything yet? With everything that is going on, why hasn't any Muslim country done anything? All they've done is lip service. Please don't do this. And even that and when they're saying please don't do this, well, go ahead and do it, and we'll help you on. That's what they're doing. So we're seeing all of this, but we need to look at all of this through the eyes of the Khilafah of Ali RA. And that's, again, I keep saying that because that makes it so much easier to understand what's going on within the Muslim world, plus, which then gives all of these external forces freedom to do what they're doing to the Muslims. And the interesting thing, though, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no shortage of soldiers. And if we as believers, or if we as Muslims don't do what we are supposed to do, He can use the non-Muslims to do what He wants them to do. And we're seeing that. We are literally seeing that. Most of the people that are protesting against what is going on in Gaza are non-Muslims. And yet the Muslim countries, if you go to Muslim countries and try to say something in support of the people of Gaza, where do you end up? Jail. Multiple cases of that. Not even say anything, simply wear something that resembles your support for the people of Gaza, and suddenly you end up in jail. If you look at what they are doing, and there's a question that when Dajjal comes, what will happen to these people? So the last few minutes I'll deal with that. If you remember, when Dajjal comes, Rasulullah ﷺ told us various things about him, amongst which is that he will control the food supply, literally, so that those who support him will, eat well, and those who oppose him will, starve. If I look at the British are easy examples. Because they colonized for such a long time, and they colonized such a large part of the world. One of their tools, or one of the weapons that they used against the people that they colonized, was food. Creating shortages of food, creating famine. In the subcontinent alone, over 40 different famines they started. Because that's a way of controlling the people. You starve them. You look at what happened here. 30 million bison were just killed. Not from food. It wasn't like they were killing them and eating them. Not even using their eyes. They just killed them and left them. Even animals don't do that. Animals kill what they use. Except for a few. such as wild dogs. Not wild dogs. Wild dogs still, they have that, but domesticated dogs that just run around. So what they're telling us is that, yeah, they are the followers of the Judge and his philosophy. So they use food as a weapon, and they're doing that same thing, in Gaza. What are they doing? They're starving the people, and this isn't just now. The people there have been starving for decades, and it's well documented food insecurity for them. If you look at who controls the food supply now, that should tell you a lot about who is who. Example like in India, you have so much farmland, but they have over-farmed, and it's not that the farmers have done this on their own. This is what they've been told to do. This is how you're supposed to farm. So they have over-farmed to such an extent that the ground has no value of its own. If you plant something in the ground, in the dirt, it won't grow unless you put all this artificial fertilizer and everything else on top of it. Who controls the fertilizer? The government controls the fertilizer. To the extent that even the places that have licenses to sell the fertilizer, they have to keep detailed records as to how much they sold and to whom they sold. Control. You control the food, you control people's stomach, and okay, maybe I'm willing to resist against somebody, but then when I see my child starving, maybe my attitude changes. So this is all playbook out of the Dajjal's, or I guess techniques out of the Dajjal's playbook. Rather. Of course, when the Dajjal comes, you have to remember the sequence here. Imam Mahdi al-Islam will show himself first. So he will come, people will recognize him, accept him, and so there will be some unification of the Muslims around him. But shortly after that is when the Dajjal will physically appear. His fitna is already here, but his physical appearance will come then. And then right after he comes, Isa al-Islam will come, because Isa al-Islam is the one who has to deal with him. But when Isa al-Islam comes, because there will be many of those, I'll give you an example, Medina Munawwar. There will be 6 earthquakes in Medina Munawwar when Dajjal comes. And as those earthquakes take place, or right after the earthquakes take place, Dajjal will land outside of Medina. And if you look at the airport that they have today, that the airport from Medina Munawwar is outside of the city. These 6 earthquakes, what will they do? Those whose faith or iman is weak will run out of the city. Oh, it's not safe. The city of Rasulullah is not safe. We're not willing to die in his city. We got to go. And where will they go? They'll go and join Dajjal. So those whose faith is like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start weeding everybody out quickly. He's already weeding us out. But there it will become more prominent or prevalent. And so at that point, either these people, a lot people will either be with Dajjal or they will be with Imam Mahdi and Isa as salam. And there will be many of those who will be non-Muslims who, when they see Isa as salam, there will be many who at the time of Mahdi al-Islam will also come into Islam, but especially large groups, when they see Isa al-Islam, will realize, oh, what we were thinking was wrong and he is right, so then they will come into Islam. But at the same time, there will be many of those who claim to be believers who will be jumping ship and going to the other side. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. May He give us Iman and keep us on Iman. I'll end here today, inshallah. We still got, I guess, 4 minutes. So any questions?
I have a few questions.
Okay. Let's
First
see
of all,
what we get.
First of all, I'd like to know where the word of Shia and Sunni come from.
Okay. So he's asking where this word of Shia and Sunni comes from.
Because back at the time of Rasulullah and Imam Ali, there was no Shia and no Sunni. Why all of a sudden it appeared everywhere?
Well, Shia in Arabic simply means group. Okay. Party of. Okay. So the term itself, as far as common usage of the term, started during the Khilafah of Ali radiallahu anhu. Those who sided with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu became known as Shia and Muawiyah, the group of Muawiyah. And those who were siding with Ali radiallahu anhu were known as Shia and Ali. Okay. However, at this time, those who are Shia and Ali are Sunni. Okay? They're not Shia in the modern sense of the word. Okay? Again, Shia at that time still is simply being used for a group or a party of.
They use it as a group, not as a...
Not as a religion
Shia
or ideology. Okay? It's simply group. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that, don't break yourself up into many Shia. He used the word Shia in the Quran. Again, Shia means group. However, when the civil war occurs during the time of Ali, and this is when it becomes more prevalent, the term is used more, and you have Shia and Ali and Shia and Muawiyah. And this is why when I mention or talk about the agreement between Imam Hassan al-Islam and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he mentions a part of that agreement is that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu will not do anything against the Shia and Ali, or his Shia or his own Shia, meaning his own supporters. Supporters here is how he's using it. Supporters of Ali or the supporters of Imam Hassan al-Islam. So he uses the word Shia there as well. So again, Shia means supporter or group. Later, however, you're going to get this split where, and I probably will get to this next week, inshallah. So inshallah you'll be here and we can go over this in more detail. So just remind me, and it'll be easier for me to go over it then because I'll have covered some other things. So it'll be easier to understand, and so, but just so later on you get that bifurcation. The word Sunni is from, will actually come from Imam Hassan alayhi salam, where he's the one who will use the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay, so again, inshallah we'll get into that next week.
Imam Hassan.
Imam Hassan alayhi salam, yes, Imam Hassan alayhi salam.
So you said the word of Sunni come from Imam Hassan.
Yeah, Sunni, of course, the Sunni actually comes also from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he talks about, the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, so those who follow the Quran and the Sunnah technically are supposed to be Sunni. Unfortunately, these days, though, because back then when it initially started, there was a distinct difference or distinction between, you had Shia, you had Sunni, and you also had the Khawarij, and then the various branches of the Nasabi and all of these things, but I'm not going into that right now, okay? Because again, like I said, it's going to be easier for us to understand this as we go on a little bit, where I won't have to go over the whole history because I've already gone over it. Because this will take a little time. Okay? That's not a quick answer question. So the Khawarij, again, we've spoken about. So the Khawarij are those who, and this is a point to remember, the term Khawarij, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself uses this term when he describes those people who look so religious on the outside, but they just go through Islam. They kharaj, exit Islam like the arrow through its prey.
Dr. Mahmoud, there's all Salafi same thinking?
No. Okay.
Say the-
Yeah, the question was, do all Salafis have the same thinking? No. The funny thing is that if you talk to the normal person, now, if you talk to the scholars, that's different. Yeah, all of them are pretty much on the same wavelength. If you talk to the normal person who associates with them, it's like one person in Pakistan. My father was in Pakistan. He met a guy, and so he asked. He was talking. My father was talking to him, and he said, "Oh, I'm Deobandi," which is another group. I'll get into that later. So my father simply asked me, he said, "What does that mean?" He couldn't answer it. So why are you going to be claiming something if you don't even know what they believe or what they think or anything like that? So this is common, simply because they've heard a term. Oh, I'm that. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. So that's why you can't say, you can't lump everybody in the same group. Even though a lot of them do lump us all, like they've lumped the Palestinian people as, oh, they're grave worshippers. Astaghfirullah. Okay. I think I'll stop here. So any questions, write them down. I keep saying this every week. I might need to start the next week with the questions first.
Or text them to you.
Oh, yeah, or text them to me. And that way I can incorporate them into whatever I'm talking about, inshallah. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide us and give us His love and the love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. And may He make us firm on this, and may He allow us to die on this. And may He raise us up in a condition where we are on this, or we lived on this love. And may He protect those that are being oppressed in Gaza and throughout the world. And may He make those who are the oppressors, may He give them guidance. But again, if guidance is not for them, then may He destroy them. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم.